July 21st, 2014.
Captain Picard quipped in Star Trek First Contact, "The economics of the future are somewhat different." And man, that statement couldn't have been more true. As divisive as Star Trek fans can be about various canon and non-canon topics alike, nothing whets their chops like talking about money. And we're going to reach deep into our pockets and spend some of those Quatloos. This is Treknicity.
Welcome to Treknicity, Star Trek podcast, where we do the deep dive on all things Star Trek. I'm your host, Mike Raper. With me are my co-hosts, Patrick Murray, joining us from Ohio, and Lars DeSenza from Los Angeles, California. In this episode, we're going to talk about a topic that has divided fans of the franchise for as long as Star Trek has been on television: money. Currency in Star Trek has been mentioned as being everything from gold press latinum to the mysterious aforementioned Quatloos to something as vague as credits, and nobody seems to actually be able to agree on how you get them, how you earn them, how you spend them, or even why. So tonight we're going to talk about the different currency types that we know about, and we're going to talk about the big question: do we really have to have money or not? Now, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about some things that happened in episodes, and I'm absolutely sure that at some point somebody will watch this who knows more than we do and will tell us we missed some currency or we missed a reference. You know what? If you found that, tell us. We'd love to hear about it. So let's get started. Lars, talk to me about currency types.
All right. Well, we're going to start with the big one, which is the Federation and primarily Starfleet. So this has been kind of a very hotly debated topic and discussion, and everybody seems to have an opinion about it. But I think there is a general consensus that if there is a form of currency that the Federation uses, it is a form of credit. It may have even been mentioned several times, a number of times in different movies, TV series, books, whatever, across the entire franchise. So, the Federation is largely a post-scarcity society with no real need for currency. Obviously, the Federation has to have some form of currency to interact with non-Federation species. We've seen a number of cases, including one that comes to mind readily is the scene from Encounter at Farpoint, where Dr. Crusher is on the Bandy homeworld, and she wants to buy a bolt of cloth or material, and she says, bill it to the ship, bill it to Dr. Crusher. Well, obviously the Bandy aren't, they're not in the Federation, so obviously they have to be paying somehow. And I guess the one that most people can agree on is a Federation credit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. From what I gather, it's basically, oh no, we need something for our Starfleet people when they're not on the ship to pay with. Yeah. Although, from what I understand, this was by the time we got to Next Generation, Gene Roddenberry had gotten his post scarcity up to 11 and didn't want any currency for anybody in Starfleet. But that doesn't work in the real galaxy now, does it?
No, especially since in the very first episode, as Lars just said, it mentions bill it to my account. So
there's also there's a reference, and I know this one has been brought up a lot, which is why it kind of sticks in my memory, is the line that Scotty says in Star Trek VI when they are at the very beginning of the movie. They're going to the briefing, and they're like, they have no idea what's going on. They're like, oh, I wonder what this is all about. And they say, and Uhura says, maybe they're throwing us a retirement party. And Scotty says the line, well, that's great because I just bought a boat. Well, why would you need to buy a boat? Why is currency? It would imply that currency was exchanged for the purchase of a personal item. Is it something that only only the basics, like housing, food, clothing, and all that are covered, but there is some form of monetary compensation or remuneration for services rendered? We don't know, but it kind of implies that.
Yeah, and we'll get into more details on that as we go through the episode. But that's definitely
to make fun of it.
Something that something that comes up in the show is obviously money is still used, but there is a pattern to how it's used, and we'll talk more about that. So outside of Starfleet, what kind of money do we have?
Well, let's talk about the Klingons. It appears that they have one defined form of currency, and that is the Darsek. It's obviously the primary inter empire currency that they use. It's been mentioned a lot in multiple series, and it is used a lot for inter-Klingon commerce and trade. As a matter of course, these interstellar species are going to be working with each other. So much like the Federation, they have to have something that they can use to exchange for goods and services with non-Klingon species. So, this is theirs. They've got one kind, and of course, like any other commerce that they, or any other trading species, they are going to use multiple currencies based on who they're working with. It's just a matter of whether or not that particular trading partner uses the Darsek, or whether they want something like, say, what the Ferengi use. Why don't we talk to have Patrick tell us about what the Ferengi love to use?
Oh, we're going to get into gold press latinum. Although, if you want to get into a little history, when we got the first and worst look at the Ferengi in the last Outpost, they just loved gold. But thankfully, by the time we got to DS9, one, they figure out how to write the Ferengi to make them not suck, and two, we got gold press latinum. Latinum is basically a metal that can't be replicated, and somebody got the idea, instead of going eyedropper with it, of putting it into bars of pretty much useless gold.
Yeah,
that's funny you say that, because again, it is that post-scarcity mentality where they talk about they basically encase the most precious currency in the most worthless packaging.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure gold's good for things still, but it's just not a monetary value.
Yeah, there's no monetary value. Yeah, I believe it's there's an episode, Who Mourns for Morn, where he leaves a whole bunch of bars of gold press latinum to Quark, and he finds out the bars are actually empty, and he even comments, "It's like, this is worthless now. The actual latinum is gone. This is worthless."
Yeah.
And so something that today would make you a millionaire was just worthless to them.
Yep. And then Morn ends the episode by belching it out of one of his stomachs.
That was great. That was brilliant.
Why not?
The funny thing is that it goes to show that just how, I guess, how low gold is valued in the greater galaxy in Star Trek. The comm badges that they use in TNG and going forward, those are gold. And the only reason why they use the gold is not because they find it precious. It's because it's a fantastic conductor.
And it doesn't, it won't corrode.
Right.
Yep.
And it looks cool. Because aesthetics are more important than anything else. I don't know. Possibly.
So there aren't there, like, I think there are 4 denominations of gold press latinum.
So yeah, we got slips, we got strips, we got bars, we got bricks. I better stop before I start rhyming things with bricks.
I always got the sense, I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I always got the feel that slip, strips, and bars people can own. Like individual people carry them around. Bricks, always, I kind of got the feel that's something like the bank has. You just don't have bricks of this laying around.
Or the Negus, one of those two.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I don't remember. Bricks only came up a couple of times, and it was never in the context of an individual that had it.
Yeah. again, it's whatever fit with the plot.
Yeah.
Once they started trying to figure out, okay, we got to put money in here. We'll go a slip. How about a strip? Yeah. Plus, you kind of need it when you're bidding on baseball cards and things. So,
or bribing people.
Yeah, and I think the reason why they introduced the concept of bricks is that they needed a way to show a very large sum of money while having still a relatively small footprint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the funny thing is, if you actually look at this, they never use it. But if you look at the set shots of Quark's bar, there's an ATM machine in his bar. So, yeah. So you could presumably get slips or strips of latinum out of this machine.
Yeah. Probably stored in a liquid tank and then dropped into the gold and spat out. That's the way I do it.
Yeah, just even think about that concept. I would be like, they must have fantastic security on it because, if they were to store the latinum in its liquid form and then have it, pressed or whatever into whatever currency that you're asking for, somebody would be totally ripping off that machine just to get the latinum out of it, especially the fact that they don't have to worry about keeping it in something like another medium, like gold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Just need a straw.
Yeah.
Or just get the tank out. Yeah.
I'm rich.
You're siphoning off an ATM machine. That just sounds so weird, but yeah, I guess that's kind of what it is.
That's the way I describe it.
Yeah. There were a few other currencies that didn't get mentioned a lot. The two of them I thought were interesting, to me from a continuity standpoint. Is the Cardassians use a currency called Alita, and it just got mentioned a few times. It wasn't something that came up very much, but the Bajoran provisional government used a Bajoran Lita. So it kind of carries with it this idea that they have gotten used to using Cardassian money. It just has a slightly different name. I was thinking, you've been occupied for 50 years. That makes complete sense that this is how you would, the money you would use would have the same name.
Yeah, we look at it on Earth. Guarantee you, there's a lot of countries that use a variation on the British pound or the US dollar.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. The Romulans, I believe, in some of the books, they mentioned that they use something called a towel. I don't think it was ever actually mentioned on screen, not that I've ever seen, but again, I believe it's something that was mentioned in other media like books or maybe games.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought they just backstabbed for things.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's one hell of a transaction. I'll take that for 2 backstabs. I want no. How about it? That's way worth more than 2. I want at least 4 backstabs. Tell you what, I'll meet you in the middle. Give me 3 backstabs. For that.
Yeah. Guy turns on, been a busy day. Turns around, knives.
Yeah, just absolutely like one of those knife dolls with the like the knife stands that you get, kitchen knife stands where the knives are shoved through the figure's back.
Yeah, the Julius Caesar knife stand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The funny thing I thought with this was Tal seems very lazy naming to me, because one of the very few, and a matter of fact, he's the second. I think he's only the second one in all the original series who has a name. Was in the 3rd season episode, the Enterprise Incident. He's the XO for the Romulan commander. His name is Tal.
Yeah.
It's like, what did you do? Just go back and find a Romulan name and say, this is what we'll call the money. So the guy's name is literally like
money.
Dollar.
Yeah.
How does that relate to Lita and Lita, Rom's wife, and the Bajoran Lita?
That is a fair question.
Sure, different spelling, but sounds the same.
Yeah, but
well, yeah, that's true. At least it was spelled different.
Yeah. I think we. But again, it's bound to happen. I mean, it's bound to happen. But I will agree that it is kind of lazy writing when it comes to coming up with, like, what do we call this thing? I call it. What are you guys watching? I'm watching Enterprise season 3. Oh, okay. We'll just call it Tau. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Could be worse. Could be for credits.
Well, I mean, credits are easy. They're pretty universally accepted.
Generic.
I mean, well, they are generic. But I mean, you look at
except in the Outer Rim, they don't take credits there. I'm sorry, wrong franchise.
Those are Republic credits anyway, so no.
Yeah. Okay.
It's okay if they don't take them. It's perfectly ethical just to mind control them into giving you whatever you want. It's okay.
Yeah, unless they're stereotypes.
This is not the franchise we want to be talking about.
We certainly don't want a certain mouse to get angry at us for mentioning things that belong to them.
No, we don't.
Come fight me, mouse. I have one of your kind, except he is public domain. Ha ha!
Oh, of course we do.
You got public domain version, and he can whistle. Anyway,
other than money,
we're going to get to the Orions next, I believe.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, because they come up as in our research, they don't seem to actually have money. Or at least they never mention anything like credits or anything like that, except I think in an Enterprise episode where they're bidding for slaves. But they do seem to trade a lot in more like precious materials, or gems or dilithium crystals, anything like that. It is almost feels a little bit more like a barter system where they're trading for valuable objects instead of money.
Exactly. And that will bring us to we have to throw the spoiler warning up, because we're going to talk about season 5, episode 2 of Lower Decks, when they visit the post-scarcity society, and they have to figure out, and basically they take the piss a little bit on how the post-scarcity society works a lot, because why not? It's a fun time to do it. But the Orions at the very end become the wealth collecting and hauling for the planet that is going post scarcity, the Tendi family specifically, because in the episode, big spoiler, they lose all their money because Tendi decides to do her Starfleet stuff. And in the end, that's how they get their fortune back and make the Blue Orions work for them, or Orions. I'm not sure how you want to pronounce them. We call the Blue Orions or Orions, just for fun. I've heard both pronunciations by everybody talking about them.
Well, even in the episode itself, the first episode, when they first encounter them, they refer to themselves as Blue Orions.
Well, they call Tendi's crew or Orions.
Orions, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. They say Orion, we say Orion.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, with the
one of the animated series,
it's kind of funny because again, that's rather cliched, because in all of Star Trek, at least pre DS9, the Orions were always pretty much considered the most materialistic of all of them. I mean, even going back to the Cage, when Pike is sitting there talking to his doctor, and he's like, well, maybe I should just become a privateer, and go out to the Orion colonies. And, they're like, oh, you want to be trading in green animal slave women. And then he has that, they show him the illusion of where he is living that life. And, again, it's very opulent. It is very hedonistic. So they've been, stereotypically portrayed as the most materialistic race in the galaxy. So it makes sense that they would use precious materials as primarily as currency, because again, they probably do trade with more species than anybody else as a whole than anybody else. So they have to have stuff that can be accepted by most without it having to have some form of exchange.
Yeah.
Although I did find it funny that you had listed there the dilithium crystals used as currency, because again, we're talking about something that is used primarily as, a starship consumable, as opposed to something that's used monetarily.
Which does make it a valuable commodity, though.
Yeah, and that there is a whole episode devoted to that where the Orions are specifically after dilithium crystals for their monetary value. Yeah,
better than what Janeway does for dilithium crystals and things. I'm sure she's committed a few war crimes.
Oh, I'm sure.
Just a few.
But we won't talk about
it. There were a few other currencies mentioned that I found. These are all from, like, again, other literature or other sources, never mentioned in any particular show. But the Zenkethi Coalition apparently has something called a lek. The Uridians have something called a vok. So here we go with these nice 3-letter words. Mm-hmm. And the Tarkalians, if you hear in the show, they would refer to Tarkalian tea. They have something called a Tarkin. Again, not exactly the most creative way of coming up with the name of their currency, but it is what it is. But that's the only ones that I could find. But, the more interesting topic is, we kind of know who has money, so it's very clear that money is out there. Especially within the Federation, is money needed? And if so, why do you need it? How do you get it? Where do you get it? And there's always been 2 points of view on this. The first one was that the Federation is a post-scarcity society and money's not needed, and it doesn't even exist. And that's been said. Captain Kirk in the 4th movie says we don't use money in the 23rd century. Captain Picard says it several times within TNG that money doesn't exist anymore. But at the same time, there are a lot of other comments that show that money is still kind of alive and well in the Federation. So there's different point of view. And, I'm going to kick this off with what I think, and I'll be curious what you guys think. I like to reconcile things that don't fit. And to me, the only way to do that touches on something that Lars said earlier, that on core Federation worlds, and maybe other worlds as well, money isn't needed for basic things. Your housing, your food, your medicine, clothing, education, all of those things, all paid for, all free because of, replicator technology. You don't need to pay for those things. But anything other than that, whether it's a boat that Scotty wants to buy, going and getting dinner at Cisco's, or anything else like that you don't actually need, you do still use money to get. So they're not good. So it's for things that aren't necessities. And as I was going through, the various series and shows and looking at how money came up, pretty much all of the references where somebody was using money, with only, I think, with 2 exceptions, it was exactly that. People were buying things that they didn't need, whether it's a baseball card, a bolt of cloth, gambling money, land on Bajor. It was things that people bought that they didn't actually have to have. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Patrick. I'll let you go ahead and chime in.
I was going to say you could go first because I'm thinking on this a little more.
Well, no problem then. That's fine. I'll go ahead well, here's the thing. I think you're right. I think that there has to be some form of money. And I think that the idea, like when Kirk says we don't use money in the 23rd century, and also the line from First Contact when Picard says the economics of the future are somewhat different. It's not meant to say that there is no money and there is no need for any kind of money. It is to say that for the basic necessities of life, we don't use money. You're not going to go and, you're not going to have you have a replicator in your house, and that will provide you a practically limitless supply of food. If you're out in public, I'm sure there are probably same thing, replicators that can provide that food for you or materials. But again, if you want something specialized, it would make sense that there would have to be some exchange of currency or remuneration for services rendered, because otherwise nobody would go in business. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Cisco's father has a restaurant, and I'm sure he is well taken care of. But ultimately, I don't think that he is going to be doing that just out of the goodness of his heart or the love of cooking food. I mean, he's working many, many hours a day. I don't. Maybe they're just trying to say, hey, people, and the mentality of people in the future is more that we are so it's so ingrained into us that we live to better ourselves and the lives around us, that we don't need to be remunerated for our services. But I think, one thing that they have really tried to show us throughout the entire franchise is that humans are still human. Even when in the first episode of Enterprise, when Trip and T'Pol and Archer are having dinner, and T'Pol is basically putting down all of humanity for being savage carnivores for eating meat, he's like, hey, what about war, poverty, hunger? Pretty much wiped out in less than 2 generations. And and then she makes an offhand comment, like a backhanded compliment. And he's like, well, there used to be cannibals on Earth. There's no telling how far humans will regress. But the idea is that it's trying to show us that no matter how good the future is, no matter how good society is, and how much, I guess, how much we have there, it is still humanity. Humans are human. There's still going to be that want, no matter what year it is or what the conditions are. So I think that there has to be some form of remuneration for services.
Yeah. And I think, within Deep Space Nine, the clearest example is you can eat at the Replimat for free. But if you want to eat at Quark's or eat at the Klingon restaurant they mentioned or any of those, you have to pay. So
yeah. Yeah, I think DS9 kind of got the let's get the balance right. Still have the post-scarcity society where all the stuff you need to live is definitely taken care of, and there's nobody that's going to go hungry or not get medical care, or basically all the things that we have to spend our full-time jobs doing so that we can do this. But then everything else, you have to have, everybody needs to have some way that they make it in the galaxy. And even in the post-scarcity, you want stuff that you can't just replicate quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little thing, but again, Deep Space Nine, Sisko's restaurant, there are scenes of Jake peeling potatoes or Sisko himself sitting outside shucking oysters. They're obviously not replicated. It's the real thing. So where did you get them from? You bought them from somebody, So yeah,
maybe the cost isn't quite as markety as it is now, but
sure, yeah.
There's a trade going on in those things.
Yeah, you whistle up some guy in Idaho and say, beam me two bags of potatoes. There you go. But the money was there, and there were a ton of references to money, all throughout the different series, especially the original, where they really had not come up with the idea of it being truly post-scarcity yet, because if there were no replicators, I mean, even the food, on the Enterprise, they called them food processors. So the idea is the food is being processed in some way, but it's not just being beamed into the machine.
It's closer to poo than the replicated poo.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, few examples they had. Trouble with tribbles, is a big one. Cyrano Jones, he is trying to sell tribbles. He even uses the words that they are sold for 10 credits. And Uhura says that she's on the station, she's shopping. So why is she shopping if she doesn't have money? Even a little example, the worst episode, the Space Hippies, Way to Eden. It comes up, it's very subtle, but one of the songs that Adam sings, he uses the words, Judge bangs the gavel and says, no bail. How do you have bail if you don't have money? Right? So the idea for money was still very much in the minds of the people who were writing it.
Because Gene Roddenberry hadn't purged that.
Exactly. But then, later again, Deep Space Nine, which is much, it's later Patrick, I think you got it exactly right. They did a good job of getting it balanced. There are a lot of references in there. In the very first episode, Sisko tells Jake he's going to have to find a job. In the Dr. Bashir, I presume, the episode where it's discovered that he has genetic enhancements that they were given to him as a child. It mentions his parents paid for it.
Wow, well, they
So yeah, exactly. You know, how'd you pay for it? It's referenced many times throughout the show that various characters have tabs at Quarks. O'Brien and Bashir do. Cisco says during the baseball game episode, Take Me Out in the Holosuite, he tells Quark to put a round of drinks on his tab. And he says that he bought land on Bajor. So there is money still being used. And again, I think the only explanation is if you live on Earth, everything that you need is taken care of, but the things you want, maybe not.
Yeah.
I just want to go on record, and I want to say that we have, other than during the introduction to the episode, we have stepped over and kind of missed talking about the one that is so silly sounding, but it was used a couple of times as references in the original series, and that especially in the Gamesters of Triskelion, when they were betting on the champions, that would be the Quatloos, and of course it's referenced again in the Futurama episode where no fan has gone before, when Fry and Melvar are having the trivia contest, and Fry has more Quatloos on his display than Melvar does. So I think it's, something that's, again, it was an attempt, I think, to show the existence of money, but at the same time he tried to make it so alien that it was like they don't have money, like Earth, Starfleet, Federation, they don't need money. We've got everything we need. These other aliens out there, they have to do it because they're not as evolved as we are, despite the fact that, clearly in other ways they are.
That is fair. But, even in more recent, Star Trek, like Picard, Raffi, the character Raffi mentions at some point about somebody sending her money after she left Starfleet. And then she mentions to Rios, we all have bills to pay. So, this is, she is ex-Starfleet, lives on Earth. So what happened that now she needs money and has bills to pay?
Premium rent for living out near Vasquez Rocks.
I would say she lives in a trailer, a space, like a future trailer out in the parking lot of Vasquez Rocks.
Got me. Got me.
I don't know. Maybe that's prime territory. For those who know me personally, know that I live about 15 minutes away from Vasquez Rocks. Put a picture somewhere of Patrick standing on the rocks from his first visit, I think. So, yeah.
Then you send me a watercolor altered version of it, and then I painted that. And it's not the best painting, but it'll go back up here. I forgot to replace the Halloween picture and put the Vasquez Rocks back. So
that's still pretty cool.
Yeah. So, but again, there's, as you say, there have been untold number of references, especially we were talking about the films in The Voyage Home. Kirk says, they're still using money. We need to get some. So they understand the need for currency. They know what it is. They know that it is still vital for what they're doing. Scotty mentions that he bought a boat in Star Trek VI. In First Contact, Picard and Lily have the discussion about the what it would take to build the Phoenix. Because she's like, oh my God, this ship is so huge that, this must have cost a fortune to build this ship. And that's where the line, the economics of the future are somewhat different. And, like he says, money doesn't exist in the 21st century. The acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. And I think that right there, that underscores the entire conversation. Yes, I think that what he's trying to say, even though he says there is no money or money doesn't exist in the 24th century, I think that was more metaphorical than an actuality. I mean, I know it was probably meant to be, again, that post, what was it? Post scarcity society, double down kind of line. But ultimately, we know that we know the opposite of that, because I just refuse to let them continue to contradict themselves in, whether there's money or whether there's not money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they've always written Picard as being kind of, the noble character, so he's going to be the one that gets up and preaches there's no money, because he did it in the series. I think it's the episode, The Neutral Zone, where they find the 3 people on the cryo ship that, paid money to be woken up because they had diseases. And the one guy, he's just Mr. Business guy, right? He's all my business. I'm all about my business, my money, my stock splits. And Picard tells him the same things. It's all about improving ourselves. We don't use money anymore.
Also, everything probably got wiped out in the wars, but oh well.
Still,
yeah.
But the point again, it is that noble approach. It's like the best part about it. What makes good writing and good TV is usually the fish out of water slap in the face moment, and that was that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you might as well be dealing with knuckle dragging cavemen at that point, because it's like we are. And again, like even Lily says it in First Contact. They're talking about evolved sensibility, and the acquisition of wealth is just one of those, or the lack thereof is just one of those evolved sensibilities.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need more? Why do we need money at this point? We've got stuff. We're good.
Yeah. Well, certainly TNG was the series that really pushed the more utopian view of the future. I mean, everything about it, even look at the Enterprise, right? I mean, it looks like a hotel. Inside, it doesn't look like a ship at all. I mean, you've got even individual low-level crew have these massive quarters with, big beds and closets and private bathrooms and carpet, and the bridge looks like a lounge. They really push this whole future idyllic utopia idea, and there not being money was a big part of that. It's just, it doesn't necessarily fit with the other series.
And I think that's where the Cerritos got it right, where they stuck the lower deckers on racks in the back.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, well, I mean, they did that in Voyager with the flashback episode to when Sulu was captain of the Excelsior. Even officers are living in 3-tier bunk racks and bunk rooms.
Fair enough.
Why they did that, I don't know. But they did it, so yeah, it's just, there's just some inconsistencies definitely within the shows about how all this works. But I do think TNG, if you're a TNG fan, that's when you grew up more with the idea that money doesn't really exist. But as you watch the other series, you start to see, no, it's still there. You just don't have to have it for the basics.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, I think that's a lot of discussion about money. I think we've covered both the types, or we've covered the types. We've covered instances where they've been used, how they fit into the franchise as a whole, and we also have talked about specific examples where they have contradicted the whole "there's no money" thing. So why don't you go ahead and we're going to wrap up this episode. Mike, why don't you go ahead and take us on out so we can move on to the next episode,
and then let everybody get in the comments and let us know what you think. So
yeah. So now that we've quote unquote put our money where our mouths are, do let us know what you think. Let us know if we got anything right or wrong. Give us your opinions or thoughts, or anything that we may have missed or gotten wrong. If there's anything we can expect Star Trek fans to know, it's all the minutia from every single book, comic book, movie, TV shows. So I'm sure we missed something. So let us know.
Somebody will let us know.
But thank you for joining us here on Treknicity, where we do the deep dive on all things in the Star Trek multiverse. Again, I'm your host, Mike Raper. With me are my co-hosts Patrick Murray and Lars DeSenza. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Treknicity.com, as well as visiting all of our socials listed above. And you can find us on your favorite podcast service. If you have ideas for future episode subjects, please feel free to email us at show@Treknicity.com or DM us on any of our social media accounts. And as always, rock out with your Spock out.